Hello everyone, my name is Aaron, and unfortunately my coffee is very cold, and this is the Comic Book Time podcast. Here's the deal, we're going to look at some of the comic books that came out this Wednesday. All of your comic book choices are on the screen if you want to go to that specific comic. Let's say you want to read, Hunger issue number 2, just click the cover and it'll take you to that point in the video in which I talk about that specific comic. If you want to just play all, just keep on watching until the end of the selection and you'll basically see everything in the order that I show you right now. That is it, and I'll see you very soon. And our first comic book is a DC title, which is Superman Action Comics issue number 23. This is the second part of the Atomic Knights story run that they're having right here. So let's talk about what happened. I'd just like to get this out of the way. Actually, no, I'm just going to save this for the end of the review. But the comic opens up with Superman meeting with Strath, which is the first knight of the Pax Galactica. Superman then meets up with some of the other warriors of the of Pax. They get into kind of a battle. Superman kind of proves himself to be a warrior, essentially showing them what he's made out of. But they're interrupted by this huge beast called the Devourer that basically comes out of nowhere. And after that, of course, they battle it. Superman finds out the Devourer has magic. Superman gets knocked down, gets back up. With the help of the other members, he essentially defeats the Devourer, saves the day, and now the Pax Galactica are essentially in his debt because they have been fighting the Devourer for many years, and now that the Devourer is finally destroyed, essentially it's like you are our master now, sort of, kind of relationship, if you will. Let's talk about what I thought overall in the comic. It isn't like this is a bad issue. It's painfully average. It seems Scott Lobdell isn't really doing anything with Action Comics. Definitely, there's been some better issues of Action Comics. It's really kind of sad because Scott Lobdell, I like what he did with some of the issues with Red Hood and the Outlaws, but with this issue of Action Comics, it's just so generic and it's so standard, painfully so. The art is a little bit higher than the writing quality, but still, this is just like I said, just so generic. And it really doesn't do anything for Action Comics. And it's just it's not bad, but it's just so, it's not what I want. I want Action Comics to be, a good Superman title, but it isn't. I mean, we have Superman Unchained that's out, and I look at that and I go back to the, Action Comics, and it's just so disappointing. I'm going to give Action Comics issue number 23 a 2.5 out of 5. Man, was this shit just mediocre. Our next comic book is Trinity of Sin, The Phantom Stranger, issue number 11. This is the first of the last batch of tie-ins that are happening for the newest event that's happening, which is the Trinity War. So let's see how it does. The comic opens up with Superman, Deadman, Katana, and Phantom Stranger kind of in this sort of realm that they call Heaven's Basement. And in Heaven's Basement, it's kind of almost, if you will, like a limbo, if you might, if I had to compare it to something. So we see them kind of going around there, and they're discussing, what they're going to do next. And when they get back to, I think it's kind of the mansion that they were in last in Justice League Dark issue 22, which you should read this before you read this one. This is definitely, editor note right there. But after they do that, Phantom Stranger are having a conversation of how they need to help Superman and bring him back and save Doctor Light and prove the innocence of Superman. So once they go essentially to heaven, they find out that there's these things called essentially neighborhoods in heaven, and that each individual soul creates their own neighborhood or like nation, universe, tailor-made to who they are as an individual. And this really gives a lot of great character kind of exposition. Really good exposition on the characters. Phantom Stranger is with Deadman, Katana, and Batman, and they disappear. And he's like, "Oh shit! They're probably gonna make their own heavens," which is they're kind of perfect place for them. Katana, hers is back in Japan with her husband, who is unfortunately dead. But as soon as Tatsu was really getting into her kind of fantasy, if you will, she's stopped by the Phantom Strangers saying, what you say may not even be real. This might not even be your husband. It could be another soul trying to feed off your life force. She freaks out because obviously, she just saw her dead husband and she'd just been ripped away from him. So it's a natural, human reaction. And the last stop on this, kind of different versions of heaven, we go to Wayne Manor, and obviously you know what this is. It's this really nice moment where it's Thomas Wayne, Martha Wayne, and of course Bruce Wayne. It's Christmas. Thomas Wayne is reading, Scrooge to his son, and we really get exposition into what Batman's, perfect moment was. And, this is a Christmas that he's never had. Most of his Christmas after that were essentially, him alone, kind of, dealing with the death of his parents. But in this one, he's with his family, and he's having the Christmas that he never had. He can have Christmas for however long he wants. He can live the perfect life with his parents and, essentially live happily ever after. But Phantom Stranger and Katana come, and Batman still knows that he needs to leave this dimension. He can't get too caught up in this. He knows he has to do the right thing, and he has to leave. He hopes that one day he can return back. And there's some really kind of sad moments where, Batman looks back, and he kind of doesn't want to leave, but he has to, because, he has to save Superman and get back to his world. Really strangely is that Deadman doesn't have a kind of heaven of his own. He explains that, but I kind of forget how he explains it. But essentially, what happens next is they find Dr. Light. He's kind of in his own dimension, and kind of like this weird light bubble. Katana cuts him out, and they revive Dr. Light. Batman starts to scream at him, almost like, what happened? Superman definitely didn't kill you. You need to tell us what's going on. He doesn't know what happened. And a bunch of, before they get any answers and are able to take Dr. Light away from the afterlight, they're stopped by a certain force who has been stalking them throughout the entire comic. Who was that force, and what will happen to the Phantom Stranger, Batman, Deadman, Dr. Light, and Katana? I guess you're going to have to read to find out. Let's talk about the positives. Wow, that is such a cool concept about the different heavens, how people create their own personal, tailor-made, custom heaven. I think that's really awesome, really cool concept. Writing's really good. The pages are filled with a lot of interesting dialogue. Everyone feels in character. I really enjoyed Phantom Stranger. I know this is his book, but he is definitely a very interesting character, very wise individual. I like his character. Deadman kind of adds a slight amount of humor in this. It's always interesting to see, even what happens in the comic of how everyone has their own heaven. Tatsu's, kind of fantasy, if you will, Bruce's. They're all heartbreakingly kind of depressing, if you will. But, you see their character. That's good kind of backstory, if you will. Art's really good. Colors are dynamic. Especially there's some really good lighting effects. Um, really nice coloring too. There's good color palette. Most of it is very, light colors, very white, bright, and it definitely works with Phantom Stranger in this issue. I think I'm gonna give Trinity of Sin, the Phantom Stranger, 4.5 out of 5. I think this has been my favorite Trinity War tie-in. It does a lot for the Trinity War event, and it also gives a lot of really interesting exposition on what's happening with the characters in Batman's group, and I thoroughly enjoyed this comic. Our next comic book is Avengers A.I. issue number 2. Let's see where the second issue of Avengers A.I. takes us. Well, the comic starts off with essentially Demetrios basically putting himself into the armor of like the oldest Tony Stark armor. I believe this is the sentient armor that Tony Stark or one of his sentient armors that basically rejected him and became self-aware. But besides the point, he's coming down with an evil plan, and he's looking for a specific robot. And we'll get to that later. But we cut back to our team. We have, everyone kind of just at the base, I guess recharging really, and they're having conversations. Some team members like, Victor doesn't really think he should be on the team because he knows that in an alternate timeline he betrays the Avengers. But Hank kind of like talks him out of it, saying, I've seen tons of different timelines, and there's even some timelines where you do something completely different. But it doesn't take too much time before Alexis screams out that there's an alert that happens, and we find out there's this huge Sentinel that's just punching the shit out of the White House. And of course, our Avengers AI jump into action. First one that attacks is the Doombot, and he's all like, I'm a Doombot, I can take him down. He's like, you can't stop me. And then just this one point of just like the Doombot being grabbed by the Sentinel and just getting his head blown off, and then hit all the way to the Thomas Jefferson Memorial. And there's this really funny moment that happens in there. So the team finally gets to the kind of, the evac zone is what they call it. And they're dealing with this huge Sentinel. He's just destroying everything that's in Washington. Like, he's attacking the Washington Memorial. And Victor in the Vision, Victor goes after some civilians while the Vision figures a way to kind of deal with the Sentinel. And how Vision deals with the Sentinel is he actually gives it consciousness. And by doing that, he has like a sort of back and forth conversation. And at one point, the Vision turns the Sentinel into an ally. But unfortunately, S.H.I.E.L.D. has a kind of strike team that does like a giant aerial attack. I think that's what you would call it, right? But there's this giant, artillery strike that happens, and it just destroys the Sentinel. And the Vision's feeling guilty that he gave him consciousness just so he could die. And then at the end of that, the comic really ends on this note where Demetrios kind of broadcasts his message to the world. What that message is and what he's planning to do, I'll let you find out. Okay, so let's talk about what I thought about this issue. I thought it was really solid, actually. I think this Avengers team is very unique and different. They still feel very human, even though this whole team is essentially just, besides the exception of Hank Pym, everyone is like a robot, right, or an android. But still, everyone still feels like they have human personalities, which is always nice to hear. There's a really some really funny scenes. The Doombot scene where he just gets his ass kicked, and he has that kind of not back and forth, but he kind of taunts the Thomas Jefferson statue. There's a part where Victor's trying to help this kid out, and you know in the scene in the movie where usually where the hero's like, grab my hand, he's like, I can, and he's like, will you shut up and just grab my hand? So I thought that was pretty funny. Different stuff like that really make this comic, enjoyable and fun. Art, there's some really stunning art in this, especially when you have those kind of like wide shots of the Sentinel and what he's doing. Some really good art that's happening. The comic book itself is very very colorful. It has like a very light color palette, which I find really actually really nice. And of course the story is very interesting. It's gonna be interesting where the comic takes off from here, because this does seem kind of like a first issue. Because the last issue was basically just getting the team together. This seems like this is the setup to what the story arc is gonna be, and what the battle is essentially gonna be. I had no problems with Avengers A.I. issue number 2. I think it's a unique Avengers book. Avengers A.I. issue number 2 gets a 4 out of 5. I'm actually kind of digging this comic. I think if you do like the cast of characters they have here, especially if you're a fan of the Vision or Doombot or whomever, you should definitely just check this out. I mean, 2 issues in, give it a try. Our next comic book is Hunger, issue number 2. So let's see where Rick Jones is and how he's going to deal with the Chitauri and Kree war. So the comic opens with Silver Surfer just lying down on his board, and he's kind of having an inner monologue, saying how, he's been basically riding throughout this universe, and there seems to be no sign of life, and he hears a single word in his head, which is death, and of course, Death himself, being Galactus, is in this world, and once we establish that Galactus is in this universe, we meet up with Rick Jones, and he's dealing with the kind of politics after the battle between the Chitauri and the Kree. So he's helping them out at the medical bay, and he's having a conversation with some of the generals. And the Watcher comes in and says, there is no time. Galactus is here. You need to stop him now, because shit's about to hit the fan. And this is really awesome establishing shot of Galactus over this entire planet. And of course, Rick Jones, he says like a line, kind of in the vein of "We're gonna need a bigger boat," kind of that thing. And once we see like the newly upgraded Galactus, we see that the Galactus swarm. It's really weirdly spaced out, but they're like the little nanites that eat anything, are going after Rick Jones, and it looks like he won't survive. But then he gets a helping hand from Silver Surfer, and Silver Surfer tells him what's happening, with the situation. He does like some weird tap on his head to be like, "There you go, now you're caught up," and apparently maybe some sort of mind melding happening. But regardless, Rick Jones understands who Galactus is, and they begin to fight back. Rick Jones hears from one of the Chitauri spaceships saying that they're going to kind of like suicide bomb their way to create a supernova that they think is going to destroy Galactus. Unfortunately, that fails. They land up on Earth, and Rick Jones and Silver Surfer basically feel all of the people, billions upon billions of people dying in that sector of the place where the bomb went off. So they're in pain. And then there's a huge kind of reveal at the end, in which I won't reveal, but shit is definitely not looking good for Earth. Alright, let's talk about what I liked about this comic. 1, characterizations of both Rick Jones and Silver Surfer were really well done. There's still a level of humor in this comic, regardless of the subject matter of, millions of people dying and the whole, kind of a large amount of death that's happening. And there's some pretty dark stuff in here, like at one point, Rick Jones almost gets, eaten alive, and he, basically vomits up a whole bunch of the Galactus swarm because it gets inside of his mouth. It's really fucking gross. Another good thing that I really like. Art. Yeah, it's really good. It's really solid, especially the one establishing shot where it's just Galactus hovering over this planet. I thought that was really well done. Different stuff like that, just the minor details. Really nice lighting effects. Color palette's really good. There's a nice mix of purple and dark colors with a balance of the light. Especially when you look at color tones, you look at Silver Surfer and Silver Surfer's, like nice, cool metallic color, and Rick Jones, really nice goldish yellow. It's really nice color contrast. There was definitely nothing painstakingly bad about this issue. I'm gonna give Hunger issue number 2 a 4 out of 5. Um, this really seems like a cool after Age of Ultron aftermath comic. I'm glad it's doing something with the Age of Ultron material that is actually good. This is far better than any tie-in Age of Ultron would have. So it's a good thing that they're doing something with the Age of Ultron, kind of mythos, if you will. And our next comic book is Deadpool Kills Deadpool, issue number 2. So let's start off with where the comic book starts off. The comic book starts off where there's a giant sort of meeting between all of the evil versions of Deadpool. Some definitely interesting designs in the crowd. I definitely like that. So once we get away from there, and we reveal that Dreadpool is back, and he's kind of been stitched in with kind of almost like a Frankenstein design. We meet up with our regular 616 Deadpool, and the Deadpool Corps is actually going to take him to the base of operations, which is an abandoned amusement park. So they go to meet the quote unquote the gang, which is the rest of the the good Deadpools that the Deadpool Corps of have been there in the actual amusement park. But once they discover that everyone has actually been murdered, Dreadpool and his own team actually show up, and there's some really funny looking Deadpools. Definitely some unique Deadpool designs as well. There's like this. One of the most noticeable ones was there was like a Wolverine crossed over with Deadpool, which I thought was pretty funny. And all he says is just like shink or bub. He just says like one letter words, like even just like grr, just general Wolverine stuff. But after that, some new characters get introduced, and ultimately there's a huge reveal at the end, which I definitely will not spoil, because one of the things I really liked about this comic is that it introduces new versions of Deadpool. I mean, come on, how do you not like Pandapool? I mean, Pandapool is fucking awesome. But anyways, there's a really nice fight, and there's even more Deadpools that, there's so many different variations of Deadpool in this comic that I think it's the strongest point of this issue. And honestly, I've been reviewing all of the Deadpool trilogy. Deadpool kills Marvel Universe, Deadpool kills Illustrated, and Deadpool kills Deadpool. And this is probably my favorite issue out of the whole trilogy. It's just so fun and wacky. And I mean, God, especially at the very end, the last page, you're just like, okay, this comic book is definitely not taking itself seriously. And I fucking love it for it. Art is great. This is a brutal comic. It doesn't pull any punches. All the variations of Deadpool are hilarious. I'm giving Deadpool Kills Deadpool a 4.5 out of 5. I'm really surprised at this issue, and I so enjoyed it. Our next comic book is Daredevil Dark Knights, issue number 3. This is the end of Lee Week's run on Daredevil, so let's see how he pulls off the finale. Well, the comic opens up with Froggy, basically Matt Murdock's partner, somewhere in Cuba, sipping on, a nice alcoholic beverage, and trying to get a hold of Matt. And he's like, I wonder what he's doing right now. And then we cut to now in New York, and Hannah and her parents, Simon and Maria, are almost losing her. Her heart is, still failing, but they're still able to stabilize her. At the Hudson River ruins, The two sailors that were in the last issue get approached by mysterious people on snowmobiles, asking where Daredevil went, and we soon later find out that it's probably Shield. It seems that Shield has involved themselves in this matter. How that kind of plays out later on, you'll see. But we see a mysterious figure who's actually carrying Hannah's replacement heart, and this individual gets knocked out. And we go into this kind of dream sequence, which we get Daredevil's origins and why he does what he does. But what's more interesting than that is that we get kind of a couple pages where, we kind of delve deep into Daredevil's psyche of why he's doing this. It seems as though Daredevil's kind of thinking of all the women in his life and how they still haunt him, and how hypothetically, or in a way, metaphorically, he's held their hearts, time and time again, but he's kind of failed them. And now that Hannah's here, he's kind of wondering, is he saving Hannah or is she saving him? And then there's kind of a nightmare scenario where there's kind of like zombie versions of Elektra and all these. But then he wakes up and he finds he's in a homeless shelter, and the homeless people kind of, bring him in, make him warm, take care of him. He's been out for about 20 minutes, and then he essentially goes out. After that, they tell Daredevil that essentially I think it's maybe one of the priests has mated himself to go on a mission to the hospital. We find out that he may or may not, be involved with, the mob. So he's kind of going out and trying to repay some of his gambling debts. And he, of course, gets captured by some goons. They take him to a warehouse and, beat the crap out of him, trying to get information on where Daredevil is. But, the thing is that they're not really going after him. They're going after Daredevil. But, of course, Daredevil makes his way to the warehouse. And, of course, he dispatches them with very vicious ease. There's even one point where he cuts out the lights and he starts... he doesn't really take on everyone. I'm sorry if I should probably rephrase. He just basically gets in there. He's too weak. He's completely kind of just shot. So he does like some Last of Us shit where he throws a bottle against like a couple boxes, and then he takes the heart and the gentleman here, and then I think his name's Johnny, and they just leave. They make their escape. And then after that, they're on their way to the hospital. Johnny can't make it, but Daredevil can. Luckily, the henchmen are stopped by S.H.I.E.L.D., who come in their white suits, and they're just completely white camo motorcycle outfits, which are pretty cool. And then after that, Daredevil finally makes it, but will Hannah, will her heart, be able to withstand the time that Daredevil has? And will she survive? Or will Daredevil be successful in saving Hannah? I guess you're going to have to find out. Let's talk about what I liked about the comic. Lee Weeks. Really good art. Really good writing. I'm going to talk about art. It seems to me that he really does capture the brutality of the winter and cold and the storm. Writing is good. He has some really good inner monologue. He really delves deep into the character of Daredevil, and he flawlessly blends in the storyline that's happening with Daredevil's personal emotions. And it's a really nice kind of compare and contrast of what's happening in real life and what's happened in the past. Daredevil hasn't had a best history with the women in his life. And now that he has kind of a new chance, you definitely figure out, how far is Daredevil willing to go to save Hannah, and very far, actually. But there's a lot of really good writing. Dialogue solid. Art is really good. Really good layouts, too. I like how they have the heart line kind of beeping through the panels, especially when you're at Hannah. I really enjoyed this issue. This is a really good finale. It ended off on a really truly high points. I'm gonna give Daredevil Dark Knights issue number 3 a 4.5 out of 5. Definitely pick up this series. I'm really excited to see the new creative team that's gonna happen next time. The cover is shocking developments with Daredevil versus it looks like Shocker, and he's just blasting the ground. So that's gonna be interesting to see if it has the same emotional or impact as the first 3 issues. We'll just have to wait and see. Our next comic book is The Superior Spider-Man, issue number 15. So this is start of a two-parter, which is Run Goblin Run. So let's see what the comic book is all about. So the comic starts off with a very nervous and frantic Hobgoblin going to the Tinker's shop, asking the Tinkerer to essentially make more weapons. Because, of course, giant flaming swords don't grow on trees. And back at Shadowland, Spider-Man is, with the help of the cops and his henchmen, are basically cleaning up what happened that night, searching for the body of, the Kingpin, and he's also on the trail of the Hobgoblin, making sure he's dead as well. And after that happens, we meet up with Phil Ulrich. He actually goes back to Daily Bugle with footage from what happened in Shadowland. He's making a lot of money. He actually has plans on leaving. But actually he doesn't have enough money, so he goes into kind of get a series of bank robberies, which gets the attention of Spider-Man, which leads to a big ending fight, and something else that happens at the very end that is very entertaining, and I definitely liked the ending. I really enjoyed the ending of this issue. Some of the things I really liked about this issue, art was great. Art was improving really dramatically from the last couple issues. Another thing that I like, there's a lot of callbacks from the previous issues. Anna Maria is in this. We get to see all of the previous characters, everyone from Horizon. It's really awesome, callback to what's happened in the previous series. It's almost like, hey, Peter Parker is still, his life still exists. Even though, Otto Octavius is, taken over as Superman in a very intensely, kind of primary way. It's almost at one point in the comic he says, maybe I should drop being, Spider-Man, and I should just completely focus on being the Spider. Being just completely devote himself to, being Spider-Man. That almost happens, but then, he gets kind of brought back by some recurring characters, which was really nice. The writing was good, nice dialogue. I'm going to give the Superior Spider-Man issue number 15 a 4.5 out of 5. Overall, I really enjoyed this issue a lot. This is a really nice kickoff to... It's a really nice setup comic, because this is a two-parter, and then I'm really excited to see the next comic, the part 2 of this, Run Goblin Run. And then issue number 17, I'm so hyped for. Our next comic book is The Superior Foes of Spider-Man, issue number 2. This is being written by Nick Spencer with art by Steven Lieber. So let's talk about the opening of this comic book, which sees our gang of misfits basically talking about, kind of in a meeting, talking about different kind of things. One of the first things they talk about is voting the bathroom to say unisex instead of something else. Obviously, it was a 4-1 vote. But they're just talking about different things, like how they need a 6th member because they are the Sinister Six, but there is 5 of them. So they're kind of just bantering on about it. It's kind of hilarious. They bring up some older kind of villains like the Sinister Syndicate, and it's really fun. And on the side, we see Boomerang dealing with kind of the fallout of him being out of jail and dealing with his parole and whatnot, and what he plans to do. And he's dealing with his lawyer, who's kind of an asshole. but he tells him, you can't really get into trouble. But of course, the team needs to start making money, so they get hired by a rival restaurant, to knock out this new fancy restaurant that is like the ultimate, absolute, awesome fucking, like, literally when you order like fucking, what is it, caviar, they'll give you, like, oh yeah, one of the examples was, I remember it now, if you order a martini, they will give you a diamond necklace. It's that really, like, one percenter type Wall Street bullshit, kind of, oh, wiping my ass with $1,000 million bills, because that exists, because I'm on Wall Street. But regardless, they get basically brought in there to rough up the place, so people will start going away from that establishment and going to the restaurant that they were hired by, in order to kind of flip the tables. But while they're enjoying a hilarious dinner, uh, they're still in costume, and they're ordering from this place, and Boomerang's in the back kind of wrecking shit, and he's getting drunk. He's like drinking a $450 bottle of Pinot Noir. I think it was like 2006 Pinot Noir, and he's just getting drunk, throwing boomerangs all over the place, and it's pretty funny. And then, of course, guess who shows up to save the day? The Punisher, and the whole team kind of scatters, and a certain character gets revealed, which is actually the Chameleon. And Chameleon actually has broken out of jail. He has been purposely put himself as the Punisher, I guess, so he could get alone time with Boomerang. And he tells him, you need to start making money. You can't start fucking around like this. And he sends him on a mission that I will not spoil, which is very interesting. He asks him to go after a certain item or object, which I'll definitely not spoil in this review. But after that, Boomerang convinces to the other group of what that item they need to steal. And then after that, we see Boomerang go back to kind of his lawyers, and he gets appointed a new parole officer, and that parole officer is very interesting. A very interesting choice. All right, let's talk about the good. Dialogue. Man, this is just funny. It's just a really fun, kind of witty. I think the best way to describe this is just quirky. I mean, you get a cast of characters that are just C-list, and it's almost like this comic book is kind of a joke, but it's not in like a bad joke way, like, maybe Superman 4 was, or Batman and Robin was, but it actually kind of makes fun of itself almost an entirely humorous way. Art is actually pretty decent. I know when it comes down to Steve Lieber, I do read. I've seen some of his art on Hawkeye, Marvel Now, and but when you get it pit up against another superior artist, a better artist like say David Aja, of course I'm gonna think that his art is a little bit not the same quality. But when it's just this book and it's just Lieber, it really stands out, and it definitely works for a comic like this. I really enjoy the art. I'm going to give The Superior Foes of Spider-Man, issue number 2, a 5 out of 5. This is a damn fun comic to read. I can kind of just sit back, just take in all this kind of quirky, strange comic that I'm reading and just enjoy it. And there is a large amount of humor in this comic, which I really appreciate. And you should definitely pick it up. It's only 2 issues in, and I'm really so interested to see where this comic is going to go. Our next comic book is Superior Carnage, issue number 2. Quick note I want to say, the cover looks really good. Really good. So anyway, the comic starts off with a classified document, sort of kind of in the vein of what Flash Thompson's document was, which was the Project Reborn, but it's kind of fixed towards, Cletus Cassidy. And again, we hear the Wizard's voice ranting about how the Venom should be used for evil and not for good, and turned into, like, an agent of the government. It should be turned to an agent of evil. So once we get to that, we cut back to the Wizard's secret lair, where Cletus Cassidy is being held, and the Wizard and Claw are figuring out how they're gonna control, Carnage, because he is, Carnage. He's fucking crazy. And we get introduced to a new character. His name is Dr. Carl Malice. Hopefully, yeah, Arthur, Dr. Malice, and he is a genius. Kind of, I think, was a psychiatrist. No, it was a surgeon, and he's a cripple, and he's like the newest member of the group here. And they're trying to kind of brainstorm ways of how they're going to kind of control Cletus Cassidy, because he is lobotomized, so his mind is just gone. It's just Carnage now. So the Wizard tries to essentially control him by himself. So he unleashes Carnage, like unchains him, and then he tries to essentially mind control him. But of course, Carnage breaks free and he starts beating the shit out of him. And then there's an intervention with the Claw as he shuts him down. And something really sad happens after he gets put down by Carnage. It seems as though the Wizard has dementia, and he remembers back to kind of his son, and at one point he even looks at the Claw, and he kind of thinks of his son Bentley, and the Claw almost is like, I'm Claw, I'm not Bentley. Who's this Bentley you're talking about? So honestly, you can really empathize with where the Wizard's coming from. And after that, completely somewhere different, we see Spider-Man, and he's talking about how he needs to go after, the Wizard, and he's kind of wondering whether or not this is a suicide mission or if he's trying to do something completely different. And then when we cut back to that, there's still more brainstorming about what we're going to do, or what the Wizard has to do in order to control the Carnage. And then we find out that he needs a mind to control. And whose mind is he going to use to control? Of course, he's going to use Malice. And Malice turns to the Claw, and he's kind of pleading with him, saying like, this, the Wizard is crazy. I mean, he has dementia. He's seeing his fucking dead son. Obviously you have to agree with him, Claw. And then Claw comes to this conclusion, saying that he's repaired me all these years, and he's kind of my family. So the last couple pages are essentially him, the Claw basically beating up a cripple, which is pretty sad, and putting him on a table. And something happens after that, which I definitely will not spoil, but definitely reach the end. The ending was very good. I'm definitely interested to see where the series is going. This is a 5-issue run, so the pacing is very well. I guess I can segue into my likes. Art, solid, so solid. Definitely a good point. The characterization of the Wizard, you definitely see that this is a desperate man in a desperate situation, and you see his desperation through his actions and everything else. Story's good. I definitely like. There's sort of like a kind of side story with Superior Spider-Man, and hopefully he's probably going to make an appearance in the series, maybe the next issue or issue number 4. And also it'll be interesting to see if Venom comes in. These are all questions that I definitely can't wait to have answered. Nothing really bad about this issue. Pacing was really well. I'm going to give this 4 out of 5. This was extremely solid. Definitely pick up Superior Carnage, issue number 2. Our next comic book is All New X-Men, issue number 15. I'd like to point out this is a different artist than, of course, Stuart Emmerman's art. So it's definitely going to impact the tone of this comic. But regardless, let's get right into it. The comic starts off with a young Rachel Gray finally returning back to the the Gray School of Higher Learning, and of course, Storm really tries to let Rachel know that, hey, a little thing happened while you were gone. The whole fact that your sister's back. But when she finally meets up, it's actually kind of this hilarious thing. Is Rachel's going to take a shower, and then Jean is there, and they kind of have this like that moment in the movie where it's like you look at your doppelganger, and then you kind of do that mirror motion, which is really funny. After that, we see Scott writing a letter to Jean. I think maybe even a love letter. And Bobby comes in, and he's expressing his frustration that he's making out. His older version is making out with Kitty Pryde, which is interesting enough. I thought that was funny that we get some of the younger versions take on what some of the older versions of themselves, some of their actions that they're doing. And Scott brings up some good points, saying that, Kitty Pryde like the man you became. Well, I thought that's very interesting. And I think one of the main focuses of this comic book was the kind of relationship between Jean Grey and Beast. There's also two sides to this. There is a confession, kind of a mental confession by the older Beast, our giant blue, fluffy version, giant Beast, kind of mentally slips out that, he's really happy that Jean Grey is back, and how he's kind of regrets not being man enough to tell Jean Grey how much he, loved her back when, when he was younger. And then we get the counterpart that happens at the later end of the comic book, where there's a confrontation between young Jean and young Hank. But we'll get to that later. Meanwhile, Bobby and Scott go out for they go on a drive in Wolverine's Jeep, which is kind of funny. And they go to the carnival, just being teenagers, trying to act normal. But of course, when they get spotted by local teenagers, they say, "Aren't you Scott Snummers? Because we saw the Rolling Stones cover with you with the douchey X." Remember that cover where he has the where it's future Scott and he has the crossed hands. So he gets recognized, and some people aren't happy that he's a mutant, but most are. So it's a really interesting kind of concept, because mutants in that world are kind of hated. And then we'll finally get back to Hank's, the conflict that I was talking about. We get the scene with Jean Grey and Hank, younger versions of themselves, and of course Jean comes out and says that, when were you going to tell me that you loved me? And there's a really nice, sweet couple panels of them kissing, and it's kind of very lighthearted. This whole comic is really lighthearted. I remember last issue was very, kind of intense action, which was good. Don't get me wrong, but this is a completely different tone, especially in the art. But getting back to that, it seems Scott and Bobby are in the middle of a car chase almost from, I think there's this car robber, and then the police are behind him, and they help out, which is some really good action scenes. I liked how they inject just a little bit of action in this, just so you keep kind of, morale up. And at the very end, Jean Grey kind of has a sort of realization about her relationship with Scott Summers, which I think will be really interesting for fans of X-Men and fans of the relationship between Jean Grey and Scott Summers. So let's get into the part of what I liked. Writing. Brian Michael Bendis does really good characterizations, and he really delves deep into the character. This was a kind of a lighthearted character moment. Mostly fixing on Bobby and Scott's relationship, and the relationship between Hank and Jean Grey, both older and younger versions, which is very nice. It's a very nice break, because next issue is fucking Battle of the Atom, which I'm really excited for. That's gonna be awesome. Another thing I liked the artist. His art works for this. It's very nicely, almost kind of a cartoonish, but it still works. So this is kind of like a laid back issue. If I had to say anything was bad about this, or I didn't dislike, the ending. Actually, no, the ending's fine. You know, this issue was really nice. I enjoyed this issue a lot, actually. All New X-Men gets a 4 out of 5, and you should definitely pick this up. Our next comic book is a new title from J. Michael Straczynski called The Sidekick. This is a new book from Image, so let's get right into it. Get ready to get very sad and depressed, because this comic book actually does do a job very well, because I think that's what it was aiming for, and it definitely did really kind of bum me out. But regardless, let's get into this. We meet up with two superheroes, the Red Cowl and Flyboy, and this is kind of the glory days of their career, and they stop a bomb from exploding in their city. But that was the past, the great days. But now, Flyboy is now a kind of man. He's a man, he's grown up, and he's kind of a little sad. He's kind of a joke, even. Everyone thinks he's just a sidekick. The comic opens up with him trying to get a prostitute off the streets, saying, like, this is in violation of street code, blah, 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 and you need to get off. And the basically, it's just this one panel of him, behind a dumpster getting a blowjob from a prostitute. So obviously things are not as what we saw at the very beginning, the kind of like the glory days of their team up. And once we find out what happened to Red Cowl, yes, that's his name. Red Cowl, unfortunately, he was kind of assassinated, kind of JFK style, at a parade, leaving the sidekick with, Barry Chase with nothing to show for. Back then, the economy wasn't too well, and the mansion was sold off to pay for the outstanding debts. So Flyboy is essentially just, on his own. He's in the future, he's trying to make money off of J. Michael Straczynski's version of Kickstarter, which is Dreamstarter, and Flyboy has like this really kind of, in retrospect, depressing donation on Dreamstarter. He's like, help me fight crime. I need, equipment, and that's going to cost me top dollar. And his Dreamstarter only has like 1,247 basically backers, and his goal is 100,000. So he's not doing very well, of course. Even more examples of how low, the sidekick, Flyboy has become. He's actually, it's been kind of mentioned, almost hinted at, that he's causing, crimes to happen. He goes into a kind of investigation, in where there's kind of a robbery, and there's a window that's been broken, and the investigators find out that if his Flyboy story matched up, which the robbers shot at him outside the windows, then the fragments of the glass would be going out of the window instead of inside. So there's kind of implications of him, performing crime just to get notoriety from the local authorities. He's even going to like combo conventions, SuperCon at San Diego. Even some of his, he's even like kind of creepily stalking his ex-girlfriend, who I guess he used to work with when back in the good old days. The comic ends with him. I'm going to say what happens before the very ending, but Flyboy kind of just goes into this abandoned house and starts just wrecking shit out of anger. And there's a big reveal at the very end of the comic, which is kind of predictable, but it's still going to be interesting to see how they incorporate that ending reveal into the next issues. Let's talk about the good. Writing. I think this is definitely going to be a slow burn comic. Just like the promotional art says, it's. I think it was like one hero, one assassination, and then like one slow descent into madness, which I definitely think this comic is trying to do. And the first issue definitely did, but kind of made me feel the kind of desperation and depression that Flyboy is going through, and you definitely see it throughout the entire comic book. J. Michael Straczynski really uses his writing to kind of showcase of where Flyboy's life is at, and it's also accompanied by the really solid art. Definitely nice kind of old school feel. Art is really good. Anything bad? Again, the end, even though it's predictable, I'm still interested to see what they're gonna do. But regardless, I'm gonna give the Sidekick issue number 1 a 4 out of 5. This seems like a promising series, and I'm definitely interested to see his descent into madness. Our next comic book is Satellite Sam, issue number 2. Of course, this is being brought by Matt Fraction. And let's see what Image Comics' new title has to offer. So the comic starts off with kind of a collage of all these pictures that Carlisle White has been taking. Of course, from the last issue, we found out that he kind of has a whole room full of this stuff. And again, after that, we kind of get even more of a idea of who Carlisle White is as a person, and what was going to happen with their contracts. Of course, Michael and his father were talking about buying a different studio. They wouldn't have to rely on the studio that they were at. And of course, there's more politics that happens with that later on. But when we get back to the future, we see Michael, kind of in the bottle, looking at all these, pictures that his father was taking. And we also see Carlisle's funeral and all of the different kind of backstory dialogue and how people thought of him as a person. We kind of get this general feeling that, he was kind of a scumbag asshole. That definitely remains to be seen. But from what what I've seen and read, it seems to me that Carlisle has been doing some kind of shady things. And I'm definitely interested to see what's going to happen. And it's going to be interesting to see what happens with the the company and the television show Satellite Sam, what Michael's going to do. And how, of course, Ginsberg, hopefully that's how you say his name, how he's going to react to the decision that Michael's going to make, whether it is he's going to leave the actual broadcast company. Honestly, this issue is just, kind of dealing with the fact that Carlisle's gone, and what does that mean for the company, and what does that mean for Michael. Michael is a huge part of the show because, he's kind of the replacement for Satellite Sam. Last issue, he did replace him in the show when they couldn't find out where he is, and then, of course, we found his body. But there is a lot of kind of politics that goes on. Definitely all about the show, what's going to happen in the future, and kind of things that might spin off. There might be an actual spin-off show. Different things like that I really find very very intriguing. There's definitely something's going to happen very soon. But something I thought was very kind of funny, but also really strange, is we see Michael. There's this one scene where he's just fapping away at the pictures that his father has taken, and he's really frustrated. You can tell that he's really, kind of pissed off of his situation that he's been put in. I don't know if it's a mixture of whether or not his dad died or the kind of stuff he's been doing behind his back, but there is a lot of frustration. We can get into this kind of what I think this comic did very well. But before I do that, I can just kind of give a sort of like a hint at what the end is. There's a certain character who is very religious, and at the end of this comic, we're going to find out that she isn't really the person she says she is, which really makes for interesting character dynamics, which I find really interesting when it comes down to character-based mediums. Of course, I might talk about shows like Mad Men. I think this really borrows heavily from Mad Men. especially when it comes down to the business side and, of course, the setting. But a certain character is not who she says she is, but I'll just leave it at that. You're going to have to read the comic to find out who that person is in question. But let's talk about what I liked about the comic. First thing, I gotta just highlight this prominently. I mean, the art. There's some panels in this, man, that are just beautiful, beautiful, beautiful. It works perfectly in black and white. I think because of the time period and how we're used to black and white films, being of course within that era. But it works perfectly for this. Really, really stunning art. I mean, if just if you're a kind of person who loves art in comic books prominently, like that's why you really pick up books. You get it mostly for the art, but you also pick it up for the stories and the characters and the writing side of things. But um, I think this might be the most well drawn book out on stands right now. I mean, if you see this on stands, pick it up, just flip through it. There's some really stunning art in this. We can talk about the writing in Matt Fraction. Very very nice, solid dialogue. Definitely, it seems like there's kind of this. I don't want to say witty dialogue going on, but there's kind of like the straight business talk that's happening. You can tell these people are businessmen, and I really think that's very interesting. It's a good solid dialogue, even when there's not business talk going on. Anything bad? Not really anything bad about the comic, but I really wonder what this comic would look like in color. And of course, I'd maybe like a little bit more of explanations of what the character's thinking about, whether or not Michael is more upset about his father's death, or what he's been doing behind his back. With the multiple ladies of the night, if you know what I mean. Of course, all the pictures that he finds. So hopefully, the we get more backstory on the character. Another thing that I just want to point out on the art. Sometimes, and I do say sometimes, it's kind of difficult to figure out which character is talking because there is no kind of outlining for the character bubbles, like the speech bubbles. They are kind of just this sort of. It's not really outlined and it's a little bit confusing to read, but regardless, Satellite Sam, with the art and everything, even with its problems. I gotta give it 4.5 out of 5. Just pick it up for the art. Story can get a lot better, even though this is a very, very solid written comic. I'm definitely gonna stick with this comic. Our next comic book is Sheltered, issue number 2. If you saw some of the previous podcasts, you really understood how much I liked the first issue, so I'm really excited to read this one. Let's get right into it. This is the fallout of the huge event of what happened in last issue of, the children of Safe Haven basically murdering their parents, every last one of them. And we catch up with Victoria, and I believe it's Haley. Yes, Victoria and Haley are out. They left a couple moments before the huge massacre happened, and when they hear the gun noises, they go and investigate, and that's when they find a couple of kids basically carrying bodies of the parents, and Haley starts freaking out, and they go and investigate. And on the other sides of this, we kind of get an introduction of who I think personally is going to be the villain or the antagonist of the story, which is Lucas. Lucas seems like this kind of almost like a very calm, sort of charismatic individual, almost like the governor. This is, of course, an Image comic, which I find kind of interesting that I would make those kind of similarities. But Lucas is kind of introduced as this kind of like cold character. Like there's this one point where he's telling them how to specifically burn the bodies. He put them in a crisscross pattern, and different kind of stuff like that highlights the fact that I think he's going to be the main villain, antagonist of the group, kind of like the leaders of all these rebel kids. But they go to investigate to see where Victoria and Haley are. And they go to Haley's house, and obviously she finds there's like a huge pool of blood in the kitchen, so she expects the worst. And then her brother Mitchell comes in, and they try to explain what happens, but of course Victoria and Haley take it obviously the wrong way later on, and they do try to escape because after they get to the huge bonfire of all of the parents' bodies, they understand something is definitely going wrong, and Victoria retaliates against Lucas. Lucas gets really pissed off, and now there's kind of a mad dash, chasing down Victoria and Haley. And of course, at the end of the comic, we establish that Victoria is, ready to kick ass and take names, and she is definitely going after Lucas and the rest of the people, trying to get some answers to what's happening. I really like the last panel. I won't spoil it for you, but it's a really nice kind of hero shot, which I really enjoyed. So what did I think of the comic? Still, I'm really interested in the story. This definitely picks up nicely from the last issue. We kind of saw the incident that happened, and now we're getting the reaction of our protagonists. I definitely like that they did it this way instead of the other way around. I think another thing that I really liked about this was the art. The art's really solid. There's a couple of panels in this that are really good. Like, I was like, there's some really good lighting in here. Especially, some of the really disturbing images of, like, the huge kind of stacks of, the dead parents you see in the fire. You kind of see silhouettes of their skeletons being burned, and different kind of images like that, especially like the blood stains on the kitchen walls, really set the tone for this comic. It is very dark. It deals with a lot of kind of grim and gritty sort of subject matter, and the art really helps it kind of push that sort of tone into the spotlight, and definitely works for this comic. Anything bad? Okay, this is just on a kind of artist standpoint, and I understand we're going to talk about the character Haley. When she cries, it's almost like the way it's drawn is that she's constantly moving, so her tears are kind of like in this streamline. I'll kind of highlight it for you, but it's not that her face is ugly when she cries. Well, it kind of is, but regardless, it's just the exact same like character frame right there. Like, the way the tears go out of her eyes are just the weirdest drawn thing ever. It's just, what is going on? I mean, literally that's all she's doing throughout the entire comic, and it's almost like Niagara Falls is fucking coming out of her goddamn like eyes. It's almost like in this like really cheesy anime sense, but regardless of that really annoying thing, I still really thought this issue was very interesting, and I'd really like to see where the story's going. Sheltered issue number 2 gets a 4 out of 5. Definitely interesting. This is probably one to keep on your radar. This could definitely pick up, and this seems very interesting. I'm so very interested in picking up the next issue. And our final comic book of the week is Trillium issue number 1, written and drawn by Jeff Lemire. This is a new title from Vertigo, so let's see how it does. It's 1921, and there is a man named Billy Williams, and he's going after the lost temple of the Incas. He learned about this great treasure of the modern age from the Royal Geographic Society at the and what's it called, fucking exhibit, an exhibit of the Amazon, and there's this guy, his name's Sir Terence Morgan, and at the exhibit he shows people where it's located, But he also tells them that if I had more time and the people that I with weren't, dying or about to die, I would go back and search for this lost temple. So Billy and a couple of his, war buddies and a couple of other, of his crew go searching for this temple. And of course, there is a dark side to what they find. They find a lot of death, mysterious figures. There's this man in sort of like a space outfit. They don't know what that is. At some point, they get attacked by the local natives. Billy is running away from all this. He gets attacked by one of the natives, kills him, ends up at a temple, and he finds this woman who is dressed in the same spaceship like kind of outfit. Now, the interesting thing about Trillium is that if you flip over the comic, you get the story that is the female's point of view. And now this female, she is a scientist. Her name is Kira. Or it's Nakira. Yeah, Nakira is her name. And she is a scientist from the year, I think it's like 3147. It's 3797. So that's so far into the future. That's like year 3000. So she's a scientist working for a colony that is unfortunately dying. There is a virus that's spreading throughout our colonies called the Cull, and this basically the scientists on this vessel are trying to find a way to counteract this virus. The virus itself is growing stronger, and it's becoming more aggressive and sort of becoming, sentient. It's adapting at a rapid pace. These scientists need to find a flower that is in the native temple. It's called Trillium, and they have this flower kind of in stock. So Kira goes out to the outer walls of the temple to meet her informant. Her informant doesn't show up, but she sees an opening in the temple. She goes inside. There is huge alien, like a whole bunch of alien individuals or just race that are just, kind of at the temple waiting for her. She ingests a certain, I think she actually ingests the Trillium, and something crazy happens. I can't really explain it, but it's all obviously shown on the screen, but something happens to her, and they take her way into the temple, and when she comes out on the other side of the temple, she meets with our other main character, Billy, on the other side. So we see her perspective on what's happening in that situation. So now that we have the story out of the way, let's talk about what I liked about this issue. First off, we'll talk about, since it's the same person, I'll just say Jeff Lemire. Really good writer. I think I really enjoy, specifically right now, I'm really enjoying his run on Green Arrow. If you're not reading Green Arrow, definitely pick it up. His run started on issue 17. Yes, issue 17 was the start of his run. And he's been actually drawing a lot of different stuff. He did some stuff for Action Comics, or not even Action Comics, it was Adventures of Superman, which is the new DC Digital First comic. Now that we have a book that he is writing and drawing, both the writer and illustrator, we can talk about the dialogue first. I'll get to the writing and then his art, but we'll start off with writing. He writes really solid dialogue. I think what he does best is storylines. He's really kind of flexing his muscle doing these kind of two character story arcs that they have. One side being this and the other side being the other. Of course, flexing his strength. What he does really well is the story. I'm really intrigued of what's happening in the story, especially these two kind of parallel storylines that are happening. I think they're both interesting and definitely engaging. He definitely does write a lot of things down. There's a lot of dialogue bubbles, and just there's so much words on the page. He really does fit them in. So let's talk about one of the major, drawing points of this series, which for me probably going to be the art. It seems to me that his art is very unique. It's definitely nothing that I'm seeing out in the industry right now. It's very strange. Some characters, especially how he draws people, they look very skinny, and their bone structure is very, there's a lot of like tight bone structure, and it's almost as some characters even look like anorexic at some points. But for some of the scenes where we go back into the to the future, in the scientist storyline, it seems that since we're dealing with a lot of sci-fi elements, and there's very like strange art, it works because it's sci-fi, and things are supposed to look kind of weird and alien in nature. So it works really, really well for what the comic book does. It's just some of the human characters look a little bit strange. It kind of reminds me of Tim Sale. Tim Sale draws some ugly ass people. I mean, definitely, definitely kind of on the same merits. But Jeff Lemire, I have to say overall, his art works wholeheartedly for this comic that he's doing, and it blends perfectly with the writing. There's a lot of brutality in some of the World War I scenes, even later on in the jungle. Really good, actually. I'm definitely surprised at what Jeff Lemire is, kind of producing and illustrating. That's why Trillium issue number 1 gets a 5 out of 5. This comic book is just unique in many different ways. I'm really interested to see where the story is going. Definitely like the whole flip the book, get a different story kind of thing. It feels like I'm getting 2 issues of a story in one, even though it's essentially 2 chapters, but it's chapter 1 of one storyline and chapter 1 of another storyline. And that to me is actually very interesting. And that is it for the Comic Book Time podcast. Thank you so much for watching. If you like the video and you want to show me some support, make sure to like the video. And if you want to see more videos like this, or even some different stuff like my Let's Play of Spider-Man 2, the Sinister Six, go check out my channel. You can subscribe there. Also, if you want to see the previous podcast, click the annotation on the screen. Make sure to like me on Google+. Also, check out www.rhymeswithageek.com. There's a lot of really awesome comic podcasters on there. Definitely check that out. That website's awesome. I'm a part of it. There's some really great shows. Check it out. This has been the end of the podcast. And of course, I'll see you next time.